Well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this afternoon's Safer World by Design webinar. And this will be the first in a series that we'll be running in coming months, focusing on the actual practical work of risk assessment and safety assessment. And very happy to have Nathan Stockman with us to get us started on that topic today. And just remind everyone, as usual, the presentation lasts approximately 25-30 minutes. At any time, you can enter a question in the question box or the chat. And at the end, we always have a good discussion then, and we'll ask Nathan various questions you want to ask him. And then we hope you'll come back and join us for other webinars on related topics. So with that, I hand over to you, Nathan. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Barry. Welcome everyone in this presentation. I make that as a toxicologist for Eurosafe company, member of contract research organization in the WePredict group. And today we're talking about working days of a cosmetic safety assessor in the EU. To begin, some few words about Eurosafe and why we are here. So Eurosafe is a CRO making in vitro tests, tests on volunteers, in vivo tests, and today focus on regulatory toxicology. So we are intervention during each step of the product development. Just to give you some numbers, we provide safety assessment services for big and small players, for CDMO, as well as for cosmetic brands, and it represents assessment of more than 100,000 from a year. So you can see some of our known customers here. And today, the aim of this webinar is to exemplify in a few cases and concerning cosmetic safety assessment. So is the questions our customers ask us every day. So we're going to talk about microbiological control and especially the challenge test with a criteria B. We are going to talk about fragrance and fragrance safety evaluations, about heritage of tolerance tests, about exposure to cosmetic products, and to finish, we can discuss about borderline products in terms of responsibilities between the responsible person and the safety assessor. So again, to begin, just briefly a few words of the context. We're here in the scope of the EU cosmetic regulation, and especially in the Article 3, provides that a cosmetic product should not have safety concern. And the description of what we talk about today is in the Annex 1, describing the cosmetic product safety report, the CPSR, and I'm going to talk a lot about this CPSR in this webinar because every case we meet here, we talk here today, can change the conclusion on the CPSR. So here we have the first case about microbiological control and the challenge test. As you know, challenge test is the preservative system efficiency, the measurement of the preservative system efficiency. You have two recognized standards for that, test methods, and as a result, you could have a criteria A, means that all is good, all is all right. You can see it on the figures on the screen on the right hand. You can see the logarithmic reduction. It's a criteria A here, all is all right. But you can also have as results a criteria B. And at this point, a risk analysis is needed. So in the next slide, we're going to discuss about this risk analysis. Just for the point, you could have also a non-compliant result, and it means that you may change formulation and probably increase the preservative system, the concentration of the preservative systems. So if you look just briefly on the differences between criteria A and criteria B, you can see here different logarithmic reduction on the strength. You can see just on the right in red, the B criteria, if just one of the strengths is not okay, is not in the scope of the A criteria, you have a criteria B. And the question is, when you have that, how to ensure the product safety? In fact, this result is not acceptable for sensitive target population. It's like a non-compliant result for this population that are newborn child, pregnant women, etc. Really sensitive target population of the cosmetic product. This result is not acceptable. So for the other target population, you can write a specific assessment and specific risk analysis, obviously on a case-by-case basis. So this is the point you need to have in your risk analysis. You need a systematic microbiological control of your raw material, a liberation control of each batch after production, and also an analysis of production conditions. These 3 points are included in the good manufacturing practices. So I hope that you manage this normally. But the 4th point is specific to the risk analysis of the test or the challenge test with a criteria B. It's a control during your stability or compatibility test. It's not really hard to manage at this point, because you provide your result before the test, your challenge test results before the test, and to manage these results, you can do a control during the stability and the compatibility test. You can also do a control after a use test, but it's only optional. And of course, all these points need to be validated by the safety assessor of the product. With all of that, the validation is good, and you can move on just with a criteria B in your challenge test and not from a criteria A. The second important point that we meet every day is about fragrance safety and fragrance safety formulation. So, as you know, fragrance formula are confidential, and in fact is up to your fragrance supplier to sustain its safety evaluation. And for that, we need 2 specific documents: the International Fragrance Association certificate and I insist on the and, the fragrance safety evaluation. The first one, the international certificate, is the maximum percentage of the fragrance you can put in your finished product, and of course it's based on the maximum percentage for each compound of the fragrance composition, which are referenced in the standards, the IFRA standards. Today we are at the 15th amendments of the standards, but the next one is in preparation. So this certificate is the first thing, but is not enough to ensure the safety of the product. The second document you need is a fragrance safety evaluation. Is a percentage, a concentration to ensure global safety for the fragrance composition. It's more than just a percentage based on the standards. It represents also the margin of safety calculation with taking into account the product type, the concentration, of course, and I insist again, the target population. On the screen, you can see an example of a real document we have. So you have the product type, range of face product, target population, adult, children, baby, and the category. Also, of course, the maximum concentration you can put in your finished product, in your cosmetic finished product. So with these two documents, we can ensure the safety and the responsibility, of course, of the fragrance supplier. But without one of them and without correct target population, the safety assessor cannot provide a safety assurance. Now, step 2, the point 3 of this presentation is about heritage of tolerance tests. So it happens when you have closed formula, it is possible to use the results of the tolerance tests on one for another. Maybe here you have an example of two formula, formula A and formula B. You could have a raw material supplier chain, a limited adaptation of ingredient concentration. It's our example now. In the actual context, you can also have problem in the supply chain on raw material. You can change, and you don't want to return the tolerance tested. And the safety assessor could help you on that. So the question is, if the chain of the ingredient composition can make a difference in terms of tolerance. And for that, safety assessor made an analysis of each ingredient from their toxicological profile and must be validated by the safety assessor and formalized in the CPSR. I insist again, I underline in the slide because we have issues with the competent authority, control authorities, mainly in France, on that. They ask the safety assessor to formalize the heritage of tolerance tests in the CPSR. So really don't hesitate to ask your safety assessor during the development of your product if you have some change in the raw material, in the concentration of the ingredients. Really ask him about is tolerance test is possible or not. Here we have our example with formula A and formula B. We can see that between two formulas, the differences in red is about the capryl hydroxamic acid. And if we check the toxicological profile on irritation and skin sensitization, you can see that this ingredient has no potential to cause a harmful effect on that point, on that endpoint. So just based on the safety profile, we can say that no safety concern is expected. And because of that, you can do a heritage of tolerance test. careful. Don't forget to check the other potential impact, like the margin of safety calculation or the impurities in the raw material. So in the finished product, you could have a change on that. You could have a change of margin of safety. You must check that before validating the heritage of the tolerance test, and it means that an updated is needed to the CPSR. Just another image, another change could happen if you change something like packaging materials. You could have differences in the use of the products. You could have differences in the exposure of the product. So you could have differences in the margin of safety calculation, in the systemic toxicity, as well as in the tolerance profile of the product. So be careful. If you change something, let know your safety assessor. Let's discuss to your safety assessor, is it okay or not? Is the heritage possible? Is the change have impact or not? Here we have two specific cases discussing the heritage. The first thing is about the preservative system. If you change the preservative systems, you need to do each tolerance test, because the preservative system has a clear potential impact in the tolerance of the product. If you increase the preservative in your product, you need to do again your tolerance test. And the second particular case is about fragrances. We just discussed about safety evaluation of fragrances, but in the product, when you want to change your fragrance, it's really complicated because of the fragrance composition confidentiality. You don't have the entire composition, of course, you have only part of it. But if you ask your fragrance superior, you will learn only the components that vary between our example, fragrance 1 and fragrance 2. You have just the 5 components that vary. It means that if you change of your fragrance supplier, you can't have this, and you need and you must do again your tolerance testing only if you are in the case of change your fragrance by the same fragrance supplier. You could have and you will learn the difference in the varying compound. So let's move to the fourth point of our presentation, is about exposure to cosmetic product. As you know, it's the main component of risk analysis and of the safety assessment because of the influence of the calculation of the margin of safety. It represents how the people use really the product, and for that you can find data in the literature, mainly probabilistic exposure. You will look at the P95 and the P90 to cover the most part of the target population. These data are in fact mainly attached on the type of the product. So here, just as an example, you can see data that you can have on different product type. You recognize here the well-known SCCS notes of guidance, and I bring you a review of the existing literature for the face cream. Just as an example, here we don't look at the numbers. It's not important. It's just to bring you some example of what we could have talking about exposure to cosmetic products. Because the question is, when you have no data in the literature, how we can find or define a correct exposure? And at these points, I propose to take an example of a face solid scrub, because we don't have this product yet in the literature, and this type of product are very fashionable actually. So what we can do? And the answer is, at the first point, you can find a closely related product. I bring you here the synthesis of two related products, the face liquid scrub and the face solid swap. You can see here in yellow the differences in frequency, in exposure, and the question is which product we can take to represent our face solid scrub. And the answer to that is you can determine by yourself the exposure. Make yourself a deterministic exposure. And for that, with this example, you can bring the frequency of the face liquid scrub, because it represents, the frequency is more represented by the product type, by the function of the product. And for the quantity, you can use face solid soap, because for the quantity, the galenic is more representative than the frequency. So to construct your deterministic exposure, you need to have the body weight, and I propose you to take the data from the SSAS. You can see at the second table the results of the calculation with the frequency of the face liquid scrub and the quantity of the face liquid soap. You have 0.33 milligram per kilogram body weight by day. So if you compare this just in the second table to the data from the closely related product, you see that your face solid scrub is just between the face liquid scrub and the face solid soap. So it means that if you take as a reference the face solid soap, you underestimated the exposure, so you miscalculated the margin of safety, and you misanalyzed, you misassessed the risk of the product. On the contrary, if you take the face liquid scrub as a reference for your face solid scrub, you overestimated the exposure. So if all your margin of safety is all right, you maximize your calculation and you don't have any problem to justify that you use the data from the face liquid scrub. This is just an example of what we have, but we have a lot really lot of examples like this to determine specific exposure that we don't have in the literature. The last point on this slide is about when you decide to make a deterministic exposure determined by yourself, you can also document the result with the result of a use test. You can measure after the use test with volunteers. You can have the quantity, you can ask for the frequency of use, and with that you can confirm or not your calculation. And now we have our last point of the presentation is about borderline products and responsibilities. So you obviously know that the products must correspond to the cosmetic definition done on Article 2 of the regulation, because it's a cosmetic, so you must correspond to the definition. But function, presentation, or some claims in your product may be really borderline, and a disagreement could happen between the responsible person and the safety assessor. So how do we manage that? In fact, the responsible person is always responsible, as known, for the regulatory statutes of the product. The responsible person is always responsible to give evidence to the compliance with the cosmetic definition for a product. And according to the regulation for the claims, the common criteria for claims, the safety assessor is only responsible for the safety claims on the product, like something like hypoallergenic, sun protection, or for children, the target population, for sensitive skin, etc. It represents just few claims can fall within the scope of the safety assessor. The other claims, for example, related to the efficacy of the product, is just under the responsibility of the responsible persons, not under the safety assessors. The only duty of the safety assessor on this point is, as a specialist, he has only a role of advice to the responsible person. He has to notify the responsible person. His duty, and the control authorities could not be happy if the safety assessor not noticed the responsible person. We do not have European guideline on this, but for more information on that specific point, you may look at the French guideline provided by Cosmed Association, a French cosmetic association, the guideline in good practice in safety assessment for cosmetic products. It really clarifies the responsibilities when you not agree with the responsible person. So with this last slide, we have is the end of my presentation. You can see here the other topics to come. The other topics we can cover for you, bring you date later. Look at our social media or newsletter to know the next date for the next webinar. Thank you everybody for your attention. And if you have questions, Barry, we can go to the question.